Goat math, it's the same as chicken math. Hey friends, this video is going to be a little bit more of a serious and solemn video as we're talking about why do we butcher our animals. Good morning, friends. Welcome back to New Day Family Farm. If you are new here, my name's Bekah, and I'm so glad that you're joining us. It's a little bit of a weird video, like I said, because we're going to talk about why it is we butcher our animals. I butchered 2 of our goats yesterday and tried to make this video then, and I felt like I really didn't do it justice. So, it's the next morning. We are milking the goats, and I thought I'd give it a take too. So the origin of our entire farm is much more luck than it is anything else. We were living in the city and realized we cannot afford to live here in the city anymore. We have to have a cheaper house. We really felt convicted for me to stay home with our kiddos, and my husband is a phenomenal teacher, and teachers are not super well paid, which is fine. But it meant we couldn't afford the house that we had. And since I was not working full time and weren't willing for me to go back to work full time, that meant we needed to downsize. So we were wildly fortunate that my parents were moving out into the country, and they said, come build a house on our land. You guys can downsize your bills a little bit and actually get a bigger house out of it, which is awesome because if you didn't know, we have 5 children. So now once you live in the country and you have 18 acres, it's hard not to have animals. Now, of course, we just started with the gateway drug, being chickens, and loved having chickens. We had fresh eggs, and any that the accidental rooster that snuck in there, or any that weren't seeming to lay very well, we had meat chickens, and it was great. From there, of course, we went into intentional meat chickens so that we could fill the freezer with chicken each year. And we also got some beef cows. Now, having the fresh beef in our freezer every year was awesome. I mean, homegrown beef is phenomenal. But we had a bull to keep our cows producing calves each year. And what that meant is the kids cannot go out with the cows. I mean, cows are big enough on their own, but definitely not a bull. I'm not gonna have my kiddos walking around in a pasture with a potentially aggressive bull. It's just way too dangerous. So from there, we tried out a dairy goat for a little while, but found we had the same issue. They're just so big. So we started looking for some goats, and we were thrilled with the ones we started with. We finally had a goat that we could get some milk from. She had a little baby who was a wether, so we thought, yes, we're gonna fill the freezer with meat. Naturally, 1 goat turned into 3, which turned into, I think we have around 30 or so now. So goat math, it's the same as chicken math. And while we were loving the goat milk, the fresh goat milk every day is awesome. We hadn't really gotten into butchering the animals yet because it's just the hardest step of the process, actually learning how to butcher your own meat. But the reality is, after getting the farm and starting to get the animals and enjoying our own meat, I had started diving down into the world of doing some research on what's really the difference between grocery store meat and homegrown, farm-grown, locally raised meat. And what I found was shocking. I had no idea how bad conditions were for the typical industry-grown, feedlot-grown meat. Most of those animals are kept indoors for chickens and pigs. They don't ever spend any time outside. They're in warehouses, sometimes even multiple stories high, on concrete floors that can be easily sanitized. They don't see the sun, they don't eat grass. They eat grain, and they eat the most fatty, high-calorie grain possible so that they will grow the fastest. Now, I don't know about you, but that just doesn't sound like a really great existence for animals. And maybe you're the type of person who says, they're animals, not people. Quit putting human emotions on your animals. But all the same, God created them to be different than people, for sure. But shouldn't we honor them in that difference? It seems like if God created animals that thrive on pasture and in sunshine, isn't it more respectful, more honoring of those animals to let them live outside in the sunshine than it is to raise more, faster, eating unnatural foods for them and having to give them antibiotics and vaccines to keep them healthy because they're so crowded? It just seems like there should be a better way. I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me, though, was learning about the body mutilation that occurs. Because animals are so crowded in these feedlot setups, pigs' tails are cut off because otherwise they chew on each other's tails. Chickens' beaks are cut off because otherwise they would peck each other to death. Now, I don't know about you, but if we have to mutilate our animals so that they will treat each other or so that they won't cause harm to each other because they're so stressed out by their living environment, first of all, morally, that sets off some alarm bells. But secondly, that sounds like a really stressed out animal, and I don't know that I want to put that in my body. Now, if you just picked up your grocery store chicken this morning, please don't take this as judgment. It's not. Our family bought all of our food, all of our meats from grocery stores. In fact, we typically picked the cheapest ones, like Walmart, because we were on a budget, and why would you spend more for meat when you could spend less down the road at the Walmart? And now I know more, because the cheapest food processor is the one that's been cutting the most corners. It's the one that does the worst living conditions for their animals, because it's cheaper that way, and then they can sell their product cheaper. Now, this video is not meant to sway you. It's simply meant to express what my family learned and why we decided we can't support grocery store meat anymore. Now, this is a super long-winded way to get around to why do we butcher our own meat? I could just go down to the local farmer's market and get the same packaged meats that I get at the grocery store, knowing they were raised in a much better environment. So certainly part of it comes down to we have the land and it's possible. You know, most people in the United States don't have the space. It's just not an option to raise their own meat. And so there is no judgment that you're not doing anything wrong. I would highly encourage you to seek out a local farmer or a farmer's market if you can, but there's no judgment if you can't. We all have to do what's best for our own families. I would simply encourage you to do a little bit of research about how animals are raised. There are lots of ways to get involved and make change happen. But for our family, we decided we wanted to eliminate that separation between how our food gets to our plate versus where it came from. We wanted our kids to be raised knowing animals and knowing that the food they eat at dinner that night came from our farm. It came from an animal that sacrificed for us. We think that that's one of the biggest ways we can honor those animals, is just having our kids and our whole family have an understanding that it takes sacrifice for food to get on our plates. And then the last reason we've decided to both raise and butcher our own animals is I want to be certain that that animal had one bad day. Our animals are raised outside on pasture, they're given good food, and I know that they're treated well. Even the animals that we know are destined for the freezer, even from birth, we give names. We love on them. We want them to be honored through their entire life because they are honoring us so much with their sacrifice. By butchering our animals at home, it allows us to not even have a scary experience at the end. Loading up in a trailer and driving to the butcher can be very stressful for an animal. Now, with our pigs, we have butchered pigs at home before and decided that is so difficult. It's so taxing that we've had to make an exception there. We prefer to take our pigs to the butcher. But our other animals that are a little bit smaller, more easy for us to deal with, it's just me and my husband doing all this work. And so we need something that we can manage. But anytime that we can, we prefer to butcher at home because I can ensure that the situation where the dispatch occurs is the most humane possible. The animal will feel absolutely no pain. They won't even know anything happened. All they know is they're eating their favorite meal and then it's lights out. That's the way I want our animals to go. So I hope this video does not come across as any sort of judgment if you don't live a lifestyle like we do. There is no judgment. We lived that way for years and I think it was just fine. This is simply an encouragement to think about where your food comes from and decide what's good for your family. If it's grocery store meat from Walmart, that's great. If it's supporting your local farmer, that's great too. Make good decisions based on what's good for your family in your situation. And just be educated, be knowledgeable about what that means for the animals that are sacrificing for your family. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.